everywhere. My Michigan TV.
Looking for the perfect weekend getaway? Love Lansing like a local. And we promise, you'll love Lansing just as much as we do.
You're watching My Michigan TV.
It's time for Lehto Live. Join author, historian, radio host, and YouTube sensation Steve Lehto as he breaks down Michigan's top stories, talks with business leaders and professional experts, and checks out the variety of statewide festivals and events that Michigan has to offer. You're watching Lehto Live on My Michigan TV.
And welcome to My Michigan Television. I'm Steve Lehto. It's a Friday. It's a gloomy day outside. It's gloomy. It's dark out. It's overcast. It's a bit on the chilly side, about 42 degrees. It's going to hit 45, they tell me, but it's just not that good looking outside. By the way, tomorrow 27, but 40 on Sunday, 49 on Monday, and 50s all next week. So I've been telling you for a while now that I think winter is gone. It's behind us. We might have some little last minute temper tantrum or something, but for the most part, I think it's behind us. So that's good. Now, you'll recall on Wednesday, oh, by the way, I wasn't here yesterday, and I apologize for that. The internet went down, and I was literally about to check in and start preparing to do the show, and my internet thingy, router, was blinking a light at me that I don't normally see blinking. And so I let Jared know that I was having issues. I had to follow up on this. I contacted my provider. They said, oh, we're doing maintenance. You'll be back up in an hour and a half. And I said, oh, okay, thank you. Because that means I can't do the show if I don't have internet. So couldn't do it yesterday, but here I am today. Now, on Wednesday, I mentioned that I was trying to get tickets to see The Cure, which of course is an English band fronted by a man named Robert Smith. I've seen them perform before. They're fabulous. And I wanted to get tickets, but of course, nowadays getting tickets to a show is always questionable in how well that'll work out for you, because they've introduced these things like dynamic pricing, where if a show is hot, they'll charge you whatever they think they can get for a ticket. And I've seen shows before, they go, oh, you want tickets where you can see the stage? Those will be $800 a piece. Why is that? Dynamic pricing. But some bands have pushed back on this, including The Cure. Now, here's the problem. I was doing research on this, and they said if you want to buy Cure tickets and they go on sale on Wednesday, you've got to log into this program, give them your name, address, phone number, all this information about you, because we're trying to eliminate people who are going to scalp the tickets from getting them. So you can get 4 tickets if you get in line and blah, 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 blah. So 11 o'clock on Wednesday, I got the notice saying, you are now allowed to buy tickets. Here's your special passcode. Come on in and buy tickets. So the first thing that happened is the first 3 or 4 times I tried to log in, it said I did not know my own password. I reset my password, and it says that password's no good. You need to reset it again. And I was doing everything where it says, you know, you need 1 uppercase, 1 lowercase, 1 number, 1 symbol, stand on your left foot, rub your, forehead like this. And it would say, okay, your new password is in place. Now go. I type it in, goes, that's no good. You need to reset your password. So after going through all those hoops, and I did some of this live here, and I did some of it during the commercial breaks, I never managed to get in until about 11:30. When I got in, they say, okay, choose your seats. And they have an image of the entire seating area of Pine Knob. And the entire seating area was gray. No matter where you clicked, not available, not available, not available. So I thought, well, you know something, worst comes to worst, I can sit in the grass. I'll take lawn seats. So I clicked and I go, I'd like lawn seats. And it goes, oh, we have 2 lawn seats available. Do you want them? I go, yes. It goes, we just sold those 2 to somebody else. We have 2 lawn seats. Do you want them? Yes. Just sold them to somebody else. We have 2 more lawn seats. Would you like them? Yes. Just sold them to somebody else. And it literally did that repeatedly, saying that it had lawn seats available that had already been sold. So I assume they were sold out. Now, here's the thing. I was convinced that the entire thing was a scam. But I spoke to a dear friend of mine who told me that someone she trusts and believes did get the same notice I did, but instead of at 11 o'clock, they got theirs at 10 o'clock, jumped right in and managed to get lawn seats. The entire seated area, designated seats, was sold out. So I personally do not believe that they ever sold those tickets to real people. I believe those are sold to organizations that will sell them for more. The reason I think that is that before Wednesday, you could go to ticket sites that were advertising tickets for sale for the Cure Show by row number, section number, seat number, everything. They go, you want this seat right here in row M, seat 1 and 2? They're yours, $800. Now, I can't imagine that they can sell the tickets if they don't have them in hand. And so they had them for sale online for exorbitant prices. So I was complaining, as you might imagine, to anybody who would listen, and a few who probably didn't want to listen. All day Wednesday and all day Thursday. I was so ticked off. And a friend of mine sent me notes and said, Steve, did you see that Robert Smith himself, the lead singer of The Cure, is also ticked off? I said, about what? About Ticketmaster. But he's upset about the fees. And see, I didn't buy any tickets, so I didn't get raked over the hot coals with fees. But The Cure's Robert Smith says he's sickened by Ticketmaster's fees. Mark Savage writes this for the BBC. When The Cure announced their 2023 U.S. tour, they promised fans they'd work hard to keep the ticket prices down. We want the tour to be affordable for all fans, and we have a very wide range of pricing at every show. When fans went to Ticketmaster on Wednesday, they were charged additional fees that, in some cases, more than doubled the price of the tickets. Frontman Robert Smith said he was sickened by the outcome. Addressing the added fees, he said, to be very clear, the artist has no way to limit them. I've been asking how they're justified. If I get anything coherent by way of an answer, I'll let you know, he promised. As the tour went on sale, fans shared screenshots of Ticketmaster's pricing breakdown. One customer bought 4 tickets for $20 a piece, ended up paying $80? No, $172, more than double. And by the way, they don't even send you tickets. It's all electronic. They just send you a code that goes into your phone, and on an app, you pull it up and use that to get into the show. So all Ticketmaster is doing is figuring out how many tickets they can sell and assigning the seats, which I'm assuming is done by a computer program. And the fact that the band is getting paid to play someplace, but Ticketmaster makes more than the band does, is evil. It's not just bad, it's evil. And so Ticketmaster needs to be taken out of this equation somehow. As the tour went on sale, fans shared these screenshots, and those screenshots included service fees, facility charges, and order processing fees, which, as noted, were often more than the cost of the tickets. Another person who wanted to see the band in Phoenix paid $72 for a ticket with a face value of $20. That is more than 3 times face value. Now, the fees varied by venue. One fan reported a $16 service fee in Massachusetts, while another reported $15 in Toronto. They didn't always exceed the base ticket price, but some of the more expensive seats cost $90. So $90 for the ticket, and then $17 for the service fees. Earlier this month, the Cure released a detailed statement about the ticketing strategy. Apart from a few Hollywood Bowl charity seats, there will be no platinum or dynamically priced tickets on this tour, they said. The band also said tickets would not be transferable in an effort to stop scalpers from getting in the way. So explain to me how all those ticket sites have got tickets available down inside the seated area at Pine Knob for way more than face value, and supposedly no one is scalping the tickets. If something comes up that prevents a fan from being able to use a ticket, they'll be able to resell it at face value. Writing on Twitter, Smith acknowledged there were real problems with the ticketing business, but confirmed that the band had a final say in setting prices, as they didn't want those prices instantly and horribly distorted by resale. The Cure did not agree to Ticketmaster's platinum tickets or dynamic pricing system, which is where prices fluctuate based on demand, because it is itself a bit of a scam. And that's what the band calls it. Asked to clarify, he said, I had a separate conversation about platinum to see if I'd misunderstood something, but I hadn't. It's a greedy scam, and all artists have the choice not to participate. If no artist participated, it would cease to exist. Some bands probably want the money. If someone's willing to pay $1,000 a ticket, sure, they'll sell you a ticket for that. But then, of course, Ticketmaster would want $1,000 in service fees. After the tickets went on sale, the musician returned to Twitter saying he's determined to get answers. I will be back if I get anything serious on the Ticketmaster fees, he concluded. In the meantime, I'm compelled to note my obvious recurring elephant in the room thought that if no one bought from scalpers, then, well, we're not complaining about the scalpers. We're complaining about Ticketmaster. They're the vendor that your tour hired to do this. The BBC has contacted Ticketmaster for comment. The company's pricing policies have come under intense scrutiny in recent months, with executives hauled in front of the U.S. Senate to answer questions about its market dominance. The hearing came after demand for Taylor Swift's upcoming tour overwhelmed the Ticketmaster system and raised questions about price inflation. With Ticketmaster's market power, why haven't you done more to reduce fees? Senator Amy Klobuchar asked the president of Ticketmaster's parent company. He responded that Ticketmaster does not set ticket prices and that the majority of added fees go to the venue, not to Ticketmaster. So then the band plays and they get paid. The venue that's paying the band also gets paid. And then Ticketmaster gets paid. I was just talking to someone about this last night. And I always hate to come out here and be the guy who sounds like back when I was a kid, I don't want to be the old man shaking his fist at clouds, right? But I mean, I've seen a bunch of shows in my life going way back. I've seen the Beach Boys at Pine Knob when I was in high school. I saw Van Halen at Cobo Hall a couple of times right around the same era. David Lee Roth. I saw the Cars. I saw the Police. I'm talking about people in the old days, people I saw in the old days. And most of those shows involved going someplace and physically handing money to somebody who then handed you tickets or printed tickets out off of a ticket printer. And that was a company called Convenient Ticket Corporation, or CTC. And CTC had outlets that were in the basement at the customer service desk of Hudson's. They had them in some travel agencies, believe it or not. They even had a kiosk at the mall. And so Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, somebody would walk out, sit at the kiosk. You'd walk up and say, do you have any tickets for, say, the Cars at Cobo Hall? And they click, click, click. Yes. What do you want? And they'd show you the screen. You go, I want 2 of those or 4 of those. You pay the money right there. And yeah, you paid a couple extra bucks for that. But it didn't double or triple the price of the tickets. And they claimed that by doing all this stuff online with apps and so it's going to make things easier. But it's not only made it easier, it's reduced their cost. But somehow their cost to us that they pass along has gone up. And so I still personally believe that it was physically impossible for someone like myself to buy seats that were in the marked areas where their seats are at Pine Knob, that a person like me could not have bought them. I love Robert Smith. I love the fact that he wanted to do something about this, but it's apparent that even he is powerless to do anything about it, because this is going to be one of the hottest shows of the year in terms of how many people want to see it and what people are willing to pay to see it. And don't get me wrong, I might wind up paying a ton of money to get to see that show. But they also claim that they've somehow instituted some things in there to keep people from scalping the tickets, which, if true, then how are all these ticket sites on the internet selling these tickets for numbers vastly inflated from their face value? They're obviously scalping. How are they doing that? How'd they get the tickets in the first place? So there's all kinds of problems here, among other things, that people like me couldn't get tickets despite the fact we were told we could. But then also the fact that people are being grotesquely overcharged 3 times face value, and that's by the person selling you the tickets, supposedly not inflating the prices. So there's my rant for the week. We'll be right back after this on My Michigan Television.
I've been on the road, out here with the squad. Everybody trying to go, yeah, the party jumping off. And we putting on a show, trying to catch a vibe. We do this every time, like, na, 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 na. This is where I wanna be, na, na, na. Never ever gonna leave, na, na, na. You ain't gonna get it from me. I'm like, na, 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 na.
My Michigan TV is streaming everywhere on Apple TV, Roku, Fire TV, and more smart TV apps. My Michigan TV is on your phone too. Take us with you wherever you go. Just search for My Michigan TV on your favorite app store or visit mymitv.com. All Michigan, streaming everywhere. My Michigan TV.
A little while ago, I told you about a story where a guy got killed in a hit-and-run accident in Oakland County, Michigan. And the person who was involved in the hit-and-run accident appeared to have left the scene and then left the country. Well, there's good news here because they've actually brought that person back. Suspect in fatal hit-and-run of MSU student faces arraignment today. Mark Hicks of Detroit News says an Oakland Township woman accused of fatally striking an MSU student with her vehicle on New Year's Day, then fleeing to Thailand, is scheduled to be arraigned Friday, officials said. Now, I got to let you know, as an attorney, when I hear that sentence, it brings to mind a legal concept that if you get put on trial and they're introducing all the evidence against you, if you skedaddled, you fled, you ran away, you went and hid, that can be used against you as evidence of your mental state. So if somebody hits somebody with their car and they stop and they get out and like, oh my gosh, what have I done? They call 911, which they're required to do by law. That's one thing. If they hit somebody with their car and they take off, well, that indicates that they may have been doing something inappropriate, either that led to the collision or preceding the collision. And if you flee the country when you know they're looking for you, that makes it look even worse. Just to let you know, the legal concept is there. So the woman is 57 years old. She returned to Michigan, but it says here she was returned to Michigan, which means they dragged her back to face charges in the death of Benjamin Cable, a 22-year-old Spartan. That's according to the Oakland County Sheriff's Office in a statement. The arraignment is set for today. In fact, it's going to start in about 15 minutes, according to schedule, before Judge Lisa Asadorian. in the 52-3rd District Court in Rochester Hills. I've been there many times. I've been in front of her many times as well. She had been in custody in San Francisco for several court hearings to clear the way for her return. She's charged with failure to stop at the scene of an accident causing death. And you've heard of this before, that if you're in another country, they can extradite you back to America. If you're in another state, they have to extradite you to get you over. You can waive those hearings, but if you don't waive them and you make them jump through all these hoops, you're basically just dragging out the process. So I greatly appreciate the assistance of the Thailand authorities and our federal partners who worked tirelessly with us to bring this woman back and to hold her accountable, says Oakland County Sheriff Michael Bouchard. It's hard to imagine how you could drive away and leave a person in the road that you had struck and killed. It'll never fill the void for the family, but hopefully it brings them a measure of closure. She's accused of hitting cable shortly before dawn, January 1st on Rochester Road, south of Whims Lane. A fatal incident occurred after an Uber driver dropped off a Shelby Township resident on the side of the road following a New Year's Eve party. Now, the woman who's being in court this morning lives in Oakland Township, allegedly never called police, and she flew to Thailand on a one-way ticket on January 3rd. Now, she's got some connections to Thailand, so it's not like she just threw a dart at the map and decided to go there. But the fact that she bought a one-way ticket also can be used against her to show that she was trying to get away and was not planning on coming back. Investigators obtained a description of the vehicle and a tip that led to identifying her as a suspect. Sheriff's officials had help from the FBI and U.S. Marshals and law enforcement officials from Thailand. During a news conference last month in Thailand, she said she had been driving to work in the dark and thought she had struck a deer. She said she spotted a body, tried to call police, but didn't due to shock. Okay, so let's deconstruct that nonsensical series of words there. She thought she'd struck a deer, but then she said she spotted a body. So that should have gotten that thought out of her head. It's obviously not a deer. It's a body because you're saying that it's a human. You hit a person, okay? So don't say, well, I thought I hit a deer, even though I can see it's a person. I mean, that's stupid. But second of all, she tried to call police, but didn't due to shock. No, you might have wanted to call the police, but you didn't try because it says she tried, but didn't due to shock. Well, if you're in shock, you didn't try to do anything. Or if you tried, it's not that hard. It's 3 buttons you press on your smartphone, 911, and guess what? At that point, you follow instructions. What is your emergency? I just hit somebody. Where? Here. We'll send somebody out. It's not that difficult. So if you think that you're in shock is an excuse to not call in a fatal car accident, you don't quite get how this works, because nobody cares about you and how you're suffering from an accident that apparently you caused and then fled from. But authorities reported on February 24th that she had voluntarily returned to the United States, taken to an undisclosed location in Michigan by U.S. Marshals who accompanied her from San Francisco, where she'd been held since February 22nd. The location was not released for security reasons. So I'm not quite sure how much security she needs, but apparently they thought that was a good idea. So she's going to be arraigned today. And all an arraignment is where they read the charges. They go through the formalities of things like whether they're going to let her post bail. There's a good chance that they might not, because one of the things that bail is supposed to do, it's supposed to guarantee that you will show up for court. If you are a good risk that you will show up, bail is set quite low. If you're a flight risk, it's either set quite high or they don't grant it to you at all. Is this woman a flight risk? Now, I don't need to be an attorney to understand the answer to that question, but I think that even the non-attorneys in my audience can look at this and go, gee, is she a flight risk? Well, last time she got in trouble, which is this occasion, she fled the scene of the accident and then fled the country with a one-way ticket. Your Honor, she's a flight risk, and the judge is going to agree with that. So if I had to bet, and I'm not a betting man, but if I had to bet, there's a chance she will not be granted bail. And if she is, it's going to be on some kind of very, very heavy restrictions, such as you're going to have a monitor on your ankle and you cannot leave your house. And someone's going to have to put up something big that would actually hurt somebody if she fails to appear for court, such as, I don't know, a house. Somebody may have to actually put their house up. And at that point, would you put your house up for this person? Which means that you'd lose it if she didn't show up for court. I don't know anybody that I know well enough where I'd put my house up to guarantee they'd show up for court if I'd known that they'd already fled the country one time. So that's just me. We'll see what happens. The hearing, like I said, starts this morning. I'll be able to let you guys know Monday what happened on that one. Meanwhile, we've been talking about all of these power outages and problems with DTE, right? And consumers, by the way. It's the two big power companies in Michigan, DTE, Detroit, and Consumers Energy. Both had a lot of outages the last few weeks. We've had some very serious problems with our power. Now, of course, we had an ice storm and a couple snowstorms, but some areas lost power more than once. So Beth LeBlanc writes that lawmakers slammed the new normal of DTE and consumers with all the outages. And there was an hours-long hearing that this all came out in. From Lansing, Michigan lawmakers grilled executives from the state's two largest utilities about prolonged and widespread power outages last month that left hundreds of thousands of residents across the state without electricity in cold conditions. The number was actually very, very close to 1 million. It was 900,000 and change, like 975 or something. At a House hearing, lawmakers questioned huge profits boasted by utility giants DTE Energy and Consumers Energy, the inadequacy of the $25 to $35 credit you get for an outage, the disparate treatment of low-income communities, and the possibility of future rates that would depend on a state-regulated utility's performance. We cannot and will not accept this as a new normal, said Rep. Helena Scott from Detroit, who leads the House Energy, Communications, and Technology Committee. She said she expects the legislature will form a work group with the state utility regulatory arm, the MPSC, to determine what statutory changes need to be made to stop or limit future outages. Apologies won't cut it anymore. It's unconscionable that people have been going so long without power, without food, losing medicine. I think if anything we got from this hearing, change needs to come, and we're going to start doing that in this legislature. And the MPSC for years has basically just rubber stamped whatever the power companies want to do. And so you don't mind the MPSC overseeing your operations, but when the legislature gets involved, you might have issues. So a top DTE Energy exec apologized for the outages and said the Detroit-based company is accelerating its spending plans in the face of more frequent extreme weather events and century-old infrastructure. He said certain investments such as tree trimming and automation can be done in the near term, but long-term changes will take time, which of course is what long-term means. I love it when they tell us things that are so obvious. A washing machine is a machine that washes. I'm not making excuses, but we have a massive electrical system at DTE, and it's going to take decades for us to continue to invest, said Trevor Lauer, president and COO of DTE. An executive for consumers similarly said that the utility, which is based in Jackson, is working to harden its electrical distribution system to prevent future outages or limit the duration of those outages. Our investments in reliability show that we are headed in the right direction, said Tanya Berry, Senior VP of Transformation and Engineering at CMS Energy, which of course is the parent company of Consumers. However, because of the vast scale of our system, it will take dollars and time. Now, if you're making monstrous profits, can you use your own dollars? No, you want to use our dollars, right? If I had to guess, that's where this is going. The MPSC commissioner, Catherine Paradick, said the recent outages are unacceptable and noted next week new rules are set to take effect that set higher standards related to outages. The state regulator also is exploring the possibility of performance-based rates and is in the process of commissioning an independent audit of Michigan's electrical system. While the causes of poor reliability are technical in nature, the impacts are anything but technical. When the power goes out, people lose. Now, Lauer defended DTE Energy against allegations that the company is putting shareholders ahead of customers by delaying investments last year to boost profits and stock dividends. He said none of those delays had been implemented yet. And when they are, they would not affect reliability. We do not try to exceed dividends, he said. We try to run in the middle of the pack. Lauer also rejected claims from lawmakers that the utility failed to invest in low-income neighborhoods, noting the company uses state environmental justice screening tools that verify the equitable investments in various communities by DTE. But lawmakers pushed back on that argument that the company hasn't had the requisite time and money to make needed investments. A representative from St. Joseph noted that he didn't live in DTE Energy or Consumers Energy Electric Service territory, but was still subject to lake effect storms similar to those elsewhere in the state. And he, I suspect, has Indiana Michigan Power, IMP, which I had when I lived in Eau Claire, Michigan, which is over here, not far from St. Joseph. And he's pointing out that there's more than two power companies in Michigan. There's another one called UPCO in the UP. And what's weird about it is that DTE and Consumers always seem to have these problems that seem disproportionate. I understand they've got more customers than IMP or UPCO. I understand that. But it still seems that they have outsized problems that don't match quite up here. So even with those storms, Andrews from St. Joseph said power outages are more rare and shorter in duration where he lives. I do think there's a choice being made about investment in the grid and stability in the grid that is not being made in other parts of the state. Meanwhile, a representative from Marquette noted that DTE in earlier testimony had estimated the cost of the storm credits could amount to about $5.1 million. But DTE reported earnings last year about $1.1 billion. Those numbers seem out of scale, Hill said. Last month, Consumers Energy, parent company, reported $1.3 billion in net profit in 2022. Currently, Michigan rules require utilities to give residents a $25 credit if their power's been out for more than 120 hours or 5 days. But the residents have to request the credit. Under a rule change that's been proposed, customers with power out for more than 96 hours qualify for an automatic $35 credit on their bill, then an extra $35 credit for each additional day without power after that. And of course, that won't even make up for what you lose, but at least it's something. DTE Energy last month said it would issue automatic credits of $35 if a resident lost power for more than 96 hours, but Consumers said that they'll only pay $25. So there you go. There you go. We're going to continue talking about what happened. We'll see if anything changes. Now, I talked about some rock concerts not so long ago. I'm going to talk about a piece of rock history in Detroit right after this on My Michigan Television.
What makes a destination special? Experience wide open spaces, peaceful lakes, winding trails, sweeping vistas, and flowing rivers. All natural, all good, all fun. Your all outdoors adventure awaits at GaylordMichigan.net.
We are connected to our Lake Huron shoreline, all 93 miles of it. Hidden bays and marinas dot our shores. Points of entry to our world. Open waters and waves, alive with people at play. Inspiration floats on sparkling waves. We are in awe of its strength and in love with its allure. We nurture it, play in it, savor it. Huron County Waters.
We've all been looking forward to a return to normalcy. especially when it involves a breath of fresh air, a dip in the water, the chance to explore, or just the opportunity to take a break and enjoy the view. Our time is now. Start making your plans now to visit Ludington at pureludington.com.
Don't miss out! Download the My Michigan TV mobile app to stay up to date with all of our programming.
One of the best known venues for small shows in Detroit is a place called St. Andrews. St. Andrews. And St. Andrews Hall has seen quite a few shows there of bands that later on became quite large. I've seen dozens of shows there, but also it was known as just a club. They'd have like music nights with DJs and things like that. But I saw Figures on a Beach there a few times. And for my Detroit friends, you'll know that Figures on a Beach was a huge band in Detroit in the mid-1980s. I actually know a few members of the band quite well. They left Detroit, moved to Boston in the mid-80s, and they had a record deal and put out a couple records. And they actually had a song that charted on the Billboard charts, which was an updated version of You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet, the Bachman-Turner Overdrive song that they gave their own little spin. And check it out if you can, although it's hard to find the short version on YouTube. They got the longer version, which has got a lot of, techno stuff added into it. But the short version they played on the radio is quite good. And I actually worked at radio stations that played it. So that's pretty cool because I could play a song and say, yeah, I know the guitarist. He's a friend of mine. But I saw a lot of shows at St. Andrews Hall, and it's still there, showing lots of shows. And somewhere along the line, they redid the floor. So right now, rock history is for sale, one piece of the floor at a time from St. Andrews Hall. Stained by cigarettes and years of rock history, pieces of the Detroit club's flooring are on Etsy and are moving fast. Adam Graham wrote about this for the Detroit News. The floor at St. Andrews Hall in Detroit has seen its share of wear and tear over the years, from concert goers who've spilled sweat, booze, and pretty much anything you can think of on it. Suspect a lot of alcohol, and a lot of cigarettes being stomped out back when they allowed smoking in the building. Pieces of that floor, which are still quite grimy, are flying out the door from East Point's Tom Moser. Moser's been selling sections of the floor online for the past year to fans who want to own a small piece of the historic rock club, where thousands of artists from the Smashing Pumpkins to Snoop Dogg, the Dead Milkmen, Deftones, Adele, and Eminem have performed over the decades. I'll have to look into Adele performing there. I find that surprising, but it's quite possible. I knew there were a lot of people like me and my friends who just absolutely love the hall, says Moser. A lot of people hold that place dear. Moser's a former security guard at St. Andrews who worked the door and the stage at the Rock Club in the early 2000s after growing up going to shows there. When the floor was being redone during the 100-year-old building's renovation in 2015, Moser got a heads up from a friend he knew was working that pieces of the floor were up for grabs if he could simply grab them. This is well before the incident last March where the hall's floor buckled while Las Vegas rapper Baby Keem performed on stage, which caused the venue to be shuttered for several months while the floor was repaired. So apparently the old floor was probably better than the new floor. Moser pulled up in his Ford Focus and filled with as many pieces of the flooring as he could. He carted them home with him and kept them stashed for years, at first in his garage and later in his basement, with no clue with what he's going to do with all those pieces of weathered, worn down rock and roll wood. He had ideas, impractical as they turned out to be, to put down panels to recreate a small section of the St. Andrews floor in his basement, but the pieces were too broken up and mismatched for anything of the sort. He considered selling it to a place like Woodward Throwbacks, the Hamtramck furniture and home goods store that builds new items out of reclaimed wood from Detroit. But then 2 summers ago, he cut off a small panel to give a friend, and he liked how it turned out, and that's when it hit him. He could section the floor into small pieces and sell them online, so he opened up an Etsy store. Sales were slow at first, and he was moving only a few a month. Do people actually want to have dirty old wood that people have stepped on and spit on and spilled drinks on and who knows what else? He wondered. Yes, they do. Then in November, sales started taking off. Now they're moving as quickly as he can cut them and put them up for sale. His day job is he's a defense contractor. He says he will completely sell out later on this month. When they're gone, they're gone. He sells the pieces in 3 frameable sizes, 5x7, 8x10, and 11x14. Prices range from $20 to $80. Jack Brown, who worked at St. Andrews for about 10 years, recently purchased one of the larger panels. When I opened it, it was honestly a little more emotional than I expected. That man's 45 years old, and he was flooded with memories upon seeing the old flooring. He's not the only one who's felt that way. The biggest surprise for me is hearing people's reactions. They saw their panel, they got teary-eyed. They spent the most important years of their lives at St. Andrews. They made the most friends there, and now they have a piece of the place forever. I didn't know people would be so affected by it, and that's been the most rewarding thing out of all of this. So I have to tell you that behind me someplace is a block of wood, and I could have been more prepared than I am right now. And I don't see it. I'm not going to dig around for it, but it's back there. But I've got a block of wood, same story from the Italian Hall. The Italian Hall, of course, where the disaster took place in 1913, 100 years ago, a little over. And the building got knocked down in 1984. They knocked the building down. There was just a big pile of debris. And they actually knocked the building down without even removing a lot of the stuff from it. So there's still furniture in there and so on. And I know from people who were there that there's this big mountain of debris. And they told people, we're going to start hauling that away to the dump. And so people took that as an invitation, like, well, if we want to save something, we can. And so there were people who climbed in there and saved things like bricks. And I actually have a brick from the Italian Hall also. But I've also got a block of wood. And there's a guy in town who got as many of the pieces of wood as he could. And think of wood flooring, right? Wood flooring is strips of wood. And they put it down, they nail it in, put it down, nail it in, like this, wood floor. And the entire hall floor was wood like that. And there may have been other wood floors in the building, but a guy who was local grabbed as many of those floorboards as he could, and he sliced them all up, and then he silk screened onto them the Italian Hall disaster with a date and some numbers and some facts and figures, and he put felt on the other side, so is a paperweight. You put it on your desk, or like I said, I've had mine on my set for a long time, and I've seen these pop up from time to time. And in fact, at one point in time, I had 2 of them. And when I got the second one, I sent it to my friend Jonathan Silvers, who was the director and producer of Red Metal, the documentary I was in about the Italian Hall disaster that was on PBS. And he made the film, and we got to talking quite a bit about it. And when I got my second one of those, I thought, well, I know somebody who will appreciate this. And I sent it to Jonathan, and he called me. He's like, Steve, you didn't have to do this. I said, no, I had 2 of them. Because he thought I gave him mine. I said, no, I had 2. So I had showed him mine earlier. And I said, well, I sent you the second one I got, because I thought to myself, who else would appreciate this besides myself? So I don't need 2, I only need 1. But it's neat to have something that you know was there. And if you simply think about this from the St. Andrews Hall perspective, all these people who walked across that board were there to see all these shows over all those years. And so some guy who just bought a floorboard from St. Andrews Hall very well may have bought a board that I stood on at one point in time at one of these shows. And it's just a neat thing to think about. And I know people who aren't very sentimental, who don't find these things as interesting as I do. But I really think that that's the case, that you look at something like that and go, wow. You know, so I've mentioned before, I've got a chair from the Italian Hall right here, right off camera. And occasionally I put it on camera so people can see it. But that chair undoubtedly was in the hall the night of the disaster. And I've got photographs of the hall that show these chairs all tumbled about because they got knocked over in the panic. And that chair is in those pictures. Don't know which chair it is, but it's in those pictures. And that changes it completely. I'm sitting on a chair right now, but this is just a chair. That right there is a piece of history. And so I always think of it that way, and it means a lot to me. Quick thing I got to mention, you may have heard that there's been problems with banks. Craziest thing, over the weekend, this past weekend, a couple banks threatened to go belly up. A lot of people are panicking now. But the U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is going to tell Congress the U.S. banking system remains sound, according to the Associated Press. So she wants Americans to feel confident about their deposits in the banks. She'll be the first Biden administration official to face lawmakers over the decision to protect uninsured money at two failed regional banks, a move that some observers have criticized as a bank bailout. I mentioned this a couple of days ago, that your deposits in a bank are FDIC insured up to $250,000. If you put more than $250,000 in a bank, you're playing roulette with anything above $250,000 because it's not insured. And so some people put more than that in a bank and just hope that it worked out. And when the bank goes belly up, they start screaming, going, well, this money's not insured. Yeah, and you knew that going in, didn't you? So the government took decisive and forceful actions to strengthen public confidence in the system. Yellen says in a prepared statement released before her appearance, I can reassure the members of the committee that our banking system remains sound and Americans can feel confident that their deposits will be there when they need them. In less than a week, Silicon Valley Bank, based in Santa Clara, California, failed after depositors rushed to withdraw money amid anxiety over the bank's health. Then regulators convened over the weekend and announced that New York-based Signature Bank had also failed. They assured all depositors, including those holding uninsured funds, were protected by the FDIC. So at this point, you may as well just remove that cap. Just say we're going to insure all of it. Why have the sign on the door of every single bank and every single window to drive up saying that? The Justice Department and the Securities and Exchange Commission have also launched investigations into the collapse of the SVB. Thursday's hearing is meant to address the president's budget proposal, but it comes after the sudden collapse of the nation's 16th largest bank, but a bank considered very important because of its connection to investment in high-tech things out west, out there in Silicon Valley. Lawmakers will question whether the money committed to make depositors whole is a bailout, the degree to which taxpayers will be on the hook for that, and the possibility of new regulation impacting the banking system. Yellen said on Face the Nation that a bailout was not on the table, stating we're not going to do that again, referring to what the U.S. government did in 2008, bailing out some companies but not others. Yellen, of course, is a former Federal Reserve chair and past president of the San Francisco Federal Reserve during that 2008 crisis. She was a leading figure in the resolution. So this week's actions demonstrate our resolute commitment to ensure that depositors' savings remain safe, she says in her testimony. I can tell you, and I forgot the name of the bank, but I can tell you that when I first got out of law school, and I was back in Michigan, and I became a lawyer and passed the bar and all that, I had a bank account at a bank that I think was in Pontiac and a couple other places in Oakland County, and the bank went under. The bank went under. And I remember hearing about it on the news that this bank failed. And I'm like, oh, that's not good. That's where I bank. Now, I didn't have more than $250,000 in that bank. So I remember hearing about it, and they said, oh, no, if you've got an amount of money in the bank that's below that, you're good. And somebody else took the bank over. And basically what happened was the Fed stepped in and said this company, this bank here is worthless in essence. And they basically gave it and its assets to somebody else. And that new bank honored all of the obligations they would have had to me with respect to the old bank. So I remember going in there, getting my money out and going to a bigger bank. Did not go at the bank that took over the failed bank. But I remember that process, and it went very smoothly. So the feds are very, very good at taking care of banks when they go under. But the bigger problem here is that there's people who had millions and millions and millions of dollars simply deposited in a bank. And they should have known that they only had insurance coverage by the FDIC up to $250,000. So I know it's not something you and I worry about on a daily basis. Like, oh my gosh, I've got these millions and millions of dollars in the bank. What happens if they go under? So Mark says when they set the $250,000 limit, that was a lot of money. I know it's gone up, though. I know that number has been raised over time. And I suspect what it is if you look at all of the deposits held by a bank, that the vast majority of them are 250 and lower. And I think with inflation, you can go back to, I think at one point in time, it was like 100,000 and it may have been 75,000. But I don't know. I have to look at that historically. But it was intended to be a lot of money. But the point is that if you've got more than that, you're supposed to do other things with your money or spread it around if you want that kind of protection. So I know it sounds like a game, but that's kind of what it turns into. So we're going to talk about some more bad weather, but it's not hitting us, at least not in the lower. We'll be talking about the upper right after this on My Michigan Television.
Pure is what you make of it. It's how the hustle of the cities can change the course of history. It's the beauty of the things we create on a canvas, on a plate, or stretched high above the sidewalk. It's a patch of green or a stretch of blue, right in the heart of downtown. It's the buzz of it all, or if you prefer, it's tuning it all out. Clear your schedule and pursue your Pure in Pure, Michigan.
You know, the snow's melted down here for the most part. We got snow in a few places, but I always like to remind people that the Upper Peninsula is a world away from the Lower Peninsula in some respects, which are both good and bad, depending on how you look at it. But one of the things is that they often get snow later in the year than we do down here in the lower. So Michigan's Upper Peninsula could see a foot of snow this weekend. Nora Rahal writes the Free Press that this weekend, Michigan's UP could see about a foot of snow along the immediate shoreline of Lake Superior, depending on the track of the incoming storm. And of course, the northern shore of Lake Superior on land is the southern shore of the lake itself, but that runs from east to west. But then the Keweenaw Peninsula goes up and into it. They often get hit real hard because they're surrounded on all sides except the south by water. So that rain is expected, rain we're getting right now, is expected to turn into snow, and by today, we'll start accumulating, and by tomorrow, it could be 12 inches. That's in the counties closer to the Lake Superior shoreline, okay? So the track of the storm will determine how much snow will fall. If it decides to go a little farther north and west, like what the current thinking is, that could end up cutting down on the snow amounts, and it would be a little bit more rain. So the storm decides to go further south and east, well, then it's more snow that can be expected. Meanwhile, wind gusts could reach up to 50 miles per hour along the shoreline. Otherwise, winds will be only 20 to 30 miles per hour in most of the UP. And there's something magnificent in the power of Lake Superior. I'm not talking about just the lake, really. It's if you stand on the shoreline, go stand on a beach on the Keweenaw Peninsula anywhere, when the waves are big and the wind is blowing, and imagine 50-mile-per-hour winds and gigantic waves, huge waves. And don't get me wrong, in the summertime, you can stand there, it's perfectly calm and glassy smooth. But that's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is 50-mile-per-hour winds and a foot of snow. And it's an amazing contrast as to what you can get up there. So if you're planning on going to the UP anytime soon, you probably do want to be careful. Driving up north could be dangerous all the way into tomorrow. Now, snow accumulations will shift toward lower Michigan around 30 to 40 miles inland from Lake Superior starting Friday, as lake effect snow will linger following the initial snowfall. Be prepared for low visibility. There could be close to blizzard-like conditions today and tonight. If you choose to travel during the storm, prepare in advance and follow the tips from experts. Make sure your car's got fuel in it. Have a blanket in the car. Make sure your phone is charged. Make sure you know where you're going, okay? Make sure your car is capable of driving in snowy weather. Let people know where you're going, okay? And just be careful. Be careful. Despite seeing a high of 50 degrees yesterday, Southeast Michigan can't expect rain in the next few hours, but I think it's actually gone past us by now. Now, we could get wind gusts of 30 to 40 miles per hour today going into tomorrow, but the snowfall, if we get any, would end tomorrow. I don't think we're going to get any. So we're not expecting accumulation with the transition, says Alex Mannion from the National Weather Service at White Lake. Saturday will still feel like winter despite heading towards spring because the temperatures will be down in the teens, especially with the wind chill. Another small snowfall will follow Saturday afternoon as Metro Detroit could see some lake effect snow showers. The lake effect only has the potential to bring about a half an inch, which is hardly any accumulation by the end of the day Saturday. I can tell you, I've driven south, for instance, from Detroit to Florida, where I left Detroit area in February, and it was cold, and there was a foot of snow on the ground, and more snow was falling. So I drove down south on 75, crossed into Ohio. I remember hitting a rest area in Ohio, and the snow was knee deep and had not been cleared out very well. And then continued on through Cincinnati and then into Kentucky. And I think it was somewhere in Kentucky where I'm driving along, and all of a sudden the snow just disappears. Boom. You can see the grass. You can see the ground. So there's just this line, and it's snow and then no snow. And I realized that line moves with the temperature and the weather and all that stuff. So I have a sneaky feeling that right now, if you got in 75 and headed north, as you headed up, you go through your Flint, your Saginaw, you kind of curve around that way, head towards West Branch. Someplace up there, you're going to start seeing more and more and more, and all of a sudden, boom, everything's going to be white. And it's going to be the exact reverse of what I just described about driving from Detroit to Florida. And so it's always interesting how that happens every single year. The snow cover comes down, the snow cover goes back up again. It's just something I think they taught us back in third or fourth grade when they were talking about weather and how the earth tilts and the seasons and all that stuff. So it's interesting, but this would be probably the last big storm in the UP if they got a foot of snow. But a foot of snow, I mean, I got friends up there. Every winter, it's the same thing, and they just get used to it. It's a whole different world. A lot of houses have got elevated porches, and then many of them have got elevated walkways out to the road. And they might take those down in the summertime, but that's because they're going to have this much snow in their yard. And so rather than have to shovel that walk, they've got that elevated walkway out to the road. And I can show you whole neighborhoods where every single house is like that. And you drive up the road to Copper Harbor in the summertime, there's a mailbox by the side of the road, and there's a big flagpole on it. And at the very, very top is a flag. And it's not a U.S. flag or a Canadian flag. It's just like a orange warning flag. And it's there because the snow gets pushed up into these banks by the side of the road, and this mailbox gets buried. How else do you find it? And how do you keep the guys with the snowplows from running it over? So that's going to wrap it up for today. I will see you Monday, like I always do, right here on My Michigan Television, 11 o'clock until 12, unless my internet goes out. But it won't. It won't. I'll see you on Monday. Till then, behave yourself. Bye-bye.
My Michigan TV is streaming everywhere on Apple TV, Roku, Fire TV, and more smart TV apps. My Michigan TV is on your phone too. Take us with you wherever you go. Just search for My Michigan TV on your favorite app store or visit mymitv.com. All Michigan,